Welcome to Running the Table, the podcast where we run through everything on the table in the world of sports. And it's finally over. Aaron Rodgers has finally officially been traded to the New York Jets. It's a saga
Took a
come to
while.
an end. It did take a while, but we're going to break down the deal itself and the implications for both teams. But Tim, are you ready to go?
Let's run it and let's get him out of here. Send him to
Let's
the AFC.
let's do this already. And quite frankly, this was a trade that I forgot even existed until it actually happened. It's like, oh yeah, we have a Hall of Fame quarterback to deal. But regardless, let's get into the details of the trade. The Jets get Aaron Rodgers, a first and a fifth, and Green Bay gets New York's first. That's a first round pick swap. Their second, their sixth, and a conditional second next year that will probably most likely turn into a first because Aaron Rodgers needs to play 65% of snaps in order for that to happen. And that's pretty much a guarantee at this point. But I mean, the implications for both teams, I think this is about as a win-win trade as you get. The Jets get your quarterback that you've been needing for so long, and it allows Green Bay to get more draft capital, get a slightly higher draft pick, move on, and now it's Jordan Love season.
For the Packers, it means that pick swap makes a move up 2 picks, up from the 15th to the 13th. For the Jets, obviously, you get that quarterback, barring some, colossal collapse or significant injury. It does mean they give up that first round pick, which is, it's pretty reasonable, I would say, up until this point. Other than the fact that you do have to consider that Rodgers is 39. It's going to be interesting to see essentially what they get out of him in terms of not only quality but quantity. But yes, this is a trade that does solve both teams' issues where you're looking to get a win now, sort of mentality, completing that team in New York. And for Green Bay, it's firmly cementing now the entering of a new era and saying, okay, we're going with this. Now let's see where it can take us. And it'll be interesting to see what they end up doing with those picks in the draft this year, because now that they have a little bit of a different focus, what do they start putting around Jordan Love to begin their new era?
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting to note just the Jets first. They theoretically become instant contenders, barring a Russell Wilson type situation. Like we said the same thing
Yeah.
about them last year, if you watch that video, and that didn't quite
And
work out.
there is a common factor between the two, and that would mean Nathaniel Hackett. But he's not the head coach here. He's back to being an OC.
Right. We'll see how that goes, but
In
there
theory, it should be good though, because I mean, you match up Rodgers with his old OC, who he was very successful with. That was the whole main reason why Nathaniel Hackett got hired as the head coach in the first place. So all signs point towards this being a good combination between the two. But there's a reason we play the game, because sometimes it doesn't
mhm.
quite work how you plan.
Yeah, and I mean Aaron Rodgers is a pretty good situation for him. There are a lot of good young skilled players that the Jets do have to surround him with Brees Hall, Garrett Wilson. They signed Mecole Hardman. You sign Alan Lazard. So they're like the building blocks are in place for the
Yeah,
Jets, and
they've got the pieces, they've got the tools.
yeah, how the Jets felt is like we have a playoff team barring quarterback, and now that they have the quarterback, they're really ready to take that next jump.
Well, yeah, and they also get to keep that first round pick. Obviously, with that pick swap, they keep their first round pick from this year. They move back 2 slots, and they're going to be able to use
Whatever.
that. Well, I'm just saying it's good for them to be able to
No,
continue
it is.
to use that as places to close up any gaps that they still have. And I think there is, stuff to be said about what they could use that for, in terms of, shoring up offensive line or even secondary. But they become contenders where now it's essentially you start maybe nitpicking more of essentially what pieces that you think you need, and then just let these guys cook throughout the season. But there's obviously a lot that's left to be seen about what this Jets team can become. Especially, it's going to come down to, in my mind, it's going to come down to injuries, because obviously last season got kind of derailed for them, with Brees Hall's injury after they got off to a pretty decent start with Brees Hall playing fantastic. So it's whether or not they can keep everybody else healthy for a run this upcoming year.
Yeah, and with the other side, with Green Bay, now you obviously move on to the Jordan Love era and you start that pseudo rebuild. I don't think it's going to be a true rebuild where we're like totally
Yeah.
terrible, but it definitely opens the door because you stack that draft capital. We now have 11 picks in this year's draft, and we jump the Jets and the Patriots in this year's draft, potentially opening up the door for a Jackson Smith and Jigba selection. Although who knows what happens there.
Yeah.
But the shenanigans are gone. It's Jordan Love season. We'll see how he plays. And the thing about this is, imagine if Jordan Love is actually good, then Brian Gutekunst is a genius.
Oh well, yeah.
Because think about it. You select Jordan Love, which lights a fire under a declining Aaron Rodgers. You get two more MVP seasons out of
Just like
Aaron
he
Rodgers.
planned.
Yet you swing that title window open for a few more years. You trade Rodgers to the Jets for meaningful draft capital, and then Jordan Love becomes good. Like if it all works out that way, and I don't know. Personally, I think there's a very real chance it might. The jury's still out. That's, like you said, why they play the game. But I think it's very real that this could all strangely work out.
It's very possible. Obviously, I am one of the jury in terms of still being out on Jordan Love, just simply because of the fact that I don't feel like we've seen enough yet. I need more of a sample size to determine whether or not that he's actually going to be able to be, a consistent,
Yeah, well, it's not that you're
high
out.
level
You just haven't
quarterback.
seen anything yet. So there's
Well,
not a
yeah. I mean,
decision to make.
yes, to me, there's not enough yet to be that optimistic. This year is going to be a big test because when you think about it, they haven't made a ton of moves at the wide receiver position, especially after losing Alan Lazard, which is obviously why this potentially opens up the opportunities in the draft here. But he has in general pretty similar weapons to what Aaron Rodgers has, and if he's able to do anything significant with them, or if he's at least able to produce a winning season of some kind, or even just an above average one for his first full season as a starter, then I definitely would see this as a win in the Green Bay Packers book, because now, you are truly retooling rather than rebuilding, where you have something there to continue to push forward with as he inevitably continues to get better and better, because I don't see with time on the field how he doesn't, improve. It's just what level does he start at under this first full season.
Well, I don't even think it's like he needs to be super good right out of the gate. I think if you see flashes in year
Yeah.
one, enough to validate picking up the fifth-year player option. Like, think about it this way. Aaron Rodgers and the Packers had a losing season and they missed the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers'
Yep.
first year as a starter. And then the second year they went to the wild card. And then the next year they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So
It's gradual improvement. You got to be able to stick with it, but
Mhm.
yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, because at least he has gotten some time under Rodgers, and you've seen obviously this little bit of playing time here and there when he's needed to come in. And as you've said and you've pointed out, like there has been a lot of good to point out from some of those performances, albeit small sample size. So it's gonna be interesting this season. I feel like for the Packers could go a lot of different ways. Obviously, most Packers fans, I'm pretty sure, are pretty aware in terms of knowing to tame their expectations. Like you said, it doesn't, magically change overnight. I know you still have some of those glowing aspirations that you're trying to hold back on. I see the smirk, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, because it could go a whole lot of different ways.
Well, nevertheless, Aaron Rodgers is a Jet. The Jet becomes contenders, and the Packers run the NFC North for the next 15 years. But that's all we got for our Aaron Rodgers trade episode. It's finally happening. It's finally done. Both teams can breathe a sigh of relief, and we can turn to draft day, which is rapidly approaching. We
Right around
have
the corner.
some content featuring the draft. So if you haven't watched that, go watch those videos. We have lots of stuff on Major League Baseball, college basketball, NFL news, so much other stuff. And if you want some stuff you want us to make, let us know. But if you want more from us, like and subscribe. And until next time, we out. So, like, this means we're going to win the Super Bowl, right? Glad we can come to
No,
that consensus that the Green Bay Packers are winning the
no,
Super Bowl next year.
no.